So I guess this is my line now. How
Just
everyone?
1 second. We
Uh,
just need to start the live stream real quick and then it will be all you. 1 second. And we are
let me get
streaming.
some. Oh, okay. So hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Katerina Anastasio, and I'm honored today to be moderating the next 2 hours of streaming around Europe. Um, and in the context of the 2025 Peace Wave. I hope you can hear me fine. I guess so. Okay, great. Before we start with the next 2 hours and the program of the European, let's say, part of the 2025 Peace Wave, I would like to give you a couple of tech tips. You see that Emily is thankfully now going to share her screen and show you how you can activate the captions, the automatized translation, so to say, that is integrated in the Zoom environment. You have to go down to your menu, click on captions, and then pretty much it's self-explanatory. You have to choose the language in which you would prefer to read. Uh, we will also post the two pictures, the two little sketches there in the chat. For those of you that need some assistance, you can always scroll up and see how you can figure that out. Now, remember that you can use the chat always. You can use it to pose questions to speakers or people that will be live with us and present their piece actions. And you can also use the chat to communicate with each other, exchange information, always respectfully, of course. So, because our program is quite full today and I need to keep it short, um, I would like to say a couple of words about the Peace Wave. For those of you that just joined, welcome as well, and welcome to all of you that have been there for the last 7 parts. This is the eighth part of the program. Um, Today, we want not only to celebrate the spirit of peace and connect with each other in the very, very hard struggle we all take upon together, but we also want to commemorate um, the importance of keeping the dream for a nuclear-free world. I actually wrote down a little piece, but I think I'm going to keep it up for later because I'm looking at the time. I want to introduce myself as well. I am Katerina. I am a facilitator for Transform Europe, and I'm a project manager for the peace related programs we're running, but also migration and militarization. And I also happen to be one of the coordinators, let's say, of the Stop Rearm campaign, uh, a campaign that was launched in March 2025. We're trying to build a European coalition and movement against the new plans of further militarization of the European continent. So I hope I will get the chance to say a couple of words on that campaign as well. I don't know if Sophie is already online because I would like to pass already to a first speaker. If not, I would like to ask if Samantha Mason from the
Here.
CND.
I
Hi,
am
hi.
here. I'm trying to show my video, but it's saying you cannot start your video because it's been disabled by the host.
You
Oh,
should
wait a
be able
second,
to
Sophie.
now.
Thank you
You
for,
should be able to
yeah,
now.
thank you. So, welcome, Sophie Bolt. Now, soon with the video. Hi, Sophie. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Sophie is the General Secretary of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, a UK-based organization. And today you prepared something for us, right? You will speak about the British military expansion and the role of NATO. And we're looking forward to hearing and your input.
Thank you. And first of all, just really lovely to see everybody and also to see Kat again. We kind of met properly at the Counter Summit in Den Haag. feels like a long time ago now, but it wasn't really. So it was really, really great to meet you and to sort of to meet the kind of wider movement, peace movement against NATO. Really inspiring event. So yeah, lovely. So yes, I'm going to talk about sort of NATO expansion, but specifically kind of the British nuclear expansion as part of that, and the impact that it's having here in Britain, but also the opposition to it. So as I say, you know, we're seeing this very significant expansion in Britain's nuclear capability at the NATO summit without any parliamentary discussion or debate. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that Britain's going to be purchasing 12 nuclear capable jets from the US. These are F-35A fighter jets. So it means that Britain, as well as being able to launch nuclear weapons from its nuclear submarines, it will also be able to launch US nuclear weapons from the sky, so from these fighter jets. So it's a very, very significant escalation in terms of Britain's nuclear capability. Highly likely that it breaches Britain's obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which it signed in good faith to take steps to disarm its nuclear weapons. So this is obviously vertical proliferation that can't possibly be part of the NPT. But, you know, obviously this takes place in the context of this massive war drive that we're seeing being driven sort of primarily by NATO and, of course, by, you know, US President Donald Trump, massively pushing for this huge increase in military spending of 5% of GDP. And the rhetoric to justify this is really increasing international tensions when we already have, you know, very sort of serious sort of conflicts across the world, you know, not least in terms of the Ukraine war, but also the horrific situation in the Middle East and beyond. So, so into that, you know, we've got this really, really terrible kind of war drive. That's meaning that now, you know, countries like Britain are massively increasing their military spending. So, you know, they've now said that they're going to be meeting that 5% of GDP by 2035, but they've certainly like accelerated the those increases and sort of, you know, brought them forward. So, you know, very sort of serious kind of escalation. And whilst, you know, countries like France and Germany, but also to some degree Britain, have been presenting like this massive war drive and this kind of rearmament as sort of defending, you know, their countries, you know, from imminent, you know, attack from Russia, very much a kind of, you know, nationalistic thing. You know, we've got to kind of defend ourselves. We can't rely on, you know, Trump. So we've kind of got to sort of step up. In reality, they are totally continuing to defer to this kind of Atlanticist leadership from the Trump administration. So, you know, we know that these massive increases in defense spending, as I said, military spending is totally driven by the Trump administration. And when you look at like how much money NATO is already kind of spending in terms of military hardware, you know, like in 2024, so just last year, its military spending amounted to 1.5 trillion. Which is 55% of the global military expenditure. So, you know, is this the you know, European NATO states are expected to increase their military spending so that in order to sort of subsidize the US, you know, so the US isn't spending so much money on its militarism? No. When you look at the US budget plans for 2026, you know, the US is going to be increasing its military spending by over 13% to just over $1 trillion. So, you know, and that's kind of the more than the next 9 biggest spenders in the world. So this isn't about reorienting sort of, you know, the same amount of military spend. It's about massively expanding that. And this is all about increasing Trump's war chest. And what is this for? You know, as NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, you know, has stated, this is about US plans to shift towards Asia. And we know that, we've seen sort of countless US military doctrines and NATO strategic defense, statements on this. This is about potential kind of military confrontation with China in order to contain it and to check its growth and its, global influence. And it's basically about maintaining US military sort of global dominance. And this is, really, really dangerous. And it risks us all. And we can see from the state of the world now, how serious that situation is. And so, Britain's role in this is to increase that threat of nuclear war. We already know that as part of NATO's nuclear sharing policy, these US nuclear bombs, the B-6112s, as they're called, are potentially already deployed, or ready to be deployed in NATO bases, like the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Belgium, and Europe. And now with this decision announced by the British government that they're going to be buying these F-35A fighter jets, which are designed specifically to launch these US nuclear bombs, it means that Britain is totally part of this. Of this sort of nuclear sharing capability. And why is this so serious? Because these bombs, they have been designed by the US specifically to be used on the battlefield, to be used in war. So they talk about them having this Dialer yield. So they have like different levels of destructive power. So some of them are smaller than the bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima, and some of them, can be much larger. But ultimately, the smallest bomb would still kill about 4,000 people, and the largest one could take out 600,000 people. And these are the type of weaponry that the US and a whole layer of the military establishment have been pushing, say that we need to have these nuclear weapons, we need to have these nuclear weapons, this type of capability, we have to have this type of capability across Europe now. And of course, with those hundreds of thousands of deaths, you're also going to be seeing, radioactive fallout. And if this is about, trying to kind of bring peace through strength, this is the argument for it, then how on earth is, a nuclear devastation going to bring about that peace? If this is about targeting Russia, using these nuclear bombs in Russia, what about the nuclear fallout that's very, very likely going to affect Ukraine? If we're all about trying to sort of defend Ukrainian people, then what's going to sort of protect them from the radioactive fallout? I mean, it's just absolutely catastrophic, the idea that these kind of nuclear weapons are being talked about to be used. So that's the kind of situation that we're facing. And then obviously from CND's point of view, we're massively turning around this, as I say, this is a really huge escalation. But not only in terms of sort of the military capability of it, but also in terms of the fact that it ties Britain even more closely into the US nuclear and military machine. There's a real kind of contradiction kind of going on here about this is going to massively increase, Britain's kind of nuclear independence. But in reality, it just totally subordinates it further to the US, because obviously these are US fighter jets. Already, this whole issue around kind of, being further integrated into the NATO nuclear mission. Well, basic things like refueling tankers, these jets like are refueled in the air. So the British refueling tankers don't work with these F-35A fighter jets. So it means that I assume, we're going to have to be leasing more US, equipment. So then you get into this a greater kind of integration into the US war fighting machine, but also in terms of the costs to Britain. And this brings me on to kind of the opposition that we're seeing. Not only is there, huge resistance, certainly in Britain, to US nuclear weapons being based here, over 61% of the population do not want US nuclear weapons based here. And that's because they completely recognize that this is only going to put us on the front line. It's going to drag us into, these sort of reckless global wars. We've seen what Trump has done in terms of the really reckless, illegal bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, and the impact of that, which we're really concerned is going to risk Iran. It's already saying that it's not going to cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency. It could well withdraw from the NPT. It's not saying that it will, but this is all going in the wrong direction, isn't it? This is all, if this is about trying to sort of stop countries from getting nuclear bombs, what the US is doing is actually much more likely for those countries to get them. So that's the kind of context that we're looking at. So it's understandable that people in Britain do not want to be closely tied to the US militarily. But also there's a real growing opposition to the impact of these huge increases in military spending. We have real economic kind of crisis here in Britain, not only because of the disaster of of Brexit, economically has had like a really big impact, but also because of the pandemic, but also because of the Ukraine war. So very, very, very sort of bad situation, big sort of financial crisis here. And this massive increase in military spending is only going to, we know, is already kind of impacting. And in terms of, we're going to be cutting our international aid, for instance. So that means the role that Britain will be playing in the world will be Trumpian, i.e. it's just all about war. We don't care about like eradicating global poverty, etc. But domestically, it means that, there's only going to be, an increase in poverty. Critical benefits, are being cut to fund these sort of, military spending around, disability benefits, but also in terms of child poverty, in terms of like older people not being able to sort of like, heat their homes. So, hundreds of thousands of people, dying through hypothermia. This is kind of what we're dealing with here. And these are the kind of, and yet the government is taking, this line. So there's really kind of growing opposition to, what this government is doing. And, we are really, really, see it as a really, really important thing that we link up with this kind of wider movement. So we're really delighted to be part of this sort of European-wide kind of movement around this. Kat's very, very sort of strongly part of, working to sort of develop this, the Stop Rearm movement. Maybe she can talk about that. But, it's so important that we're part of that. And it really is inspiring for us. We were part of the, as I say, part of the Counter Summit. Over 500 people took part in that. Loads of young people. It's really dynamic. It was really, really great. There were 5,000 people kind of protesting in the streets in the Netherlands. And then just the following day, over 150,000 people were protesting in Rome. So, there is a really, really strong movement that's already kind of turning around this. And C&D, us here in Britain, we really, want to be part of that. We are part of that. And we think that that's the way that we are going to sort of stop this. And we need to, because we know how serious the challenges are that we face. Across Europe and globally, how important it is that we rebuild and we really strengthen solidarity, across Europe and globally, so that we can, halt this and we can get our voices to be, much stronger in terms of arguing for an alternative to this. Which is, we need diplomacy. Diplomacy has just gone by the wayside. That's got to be reinstated. We have massively got to push for, the international frameworks to sort of control arms expansion. We've really got to get those nuclear weapons states to be kind of meeting their kind of obligations. So really sort of strengthening those kind of international frameworks is really important, but also looking to the global south. Where you are seeing like these really amazing kind of progressive leaderships, like for instance, from Brazil and sort of South Africa, that are really kind of leading the way in terms of bringing, forward like peace initiatives, as well as really kind of challenging the the horrific kind of breaches of international law that we're seeing, for instance, in terms of Israel, for instance, but the US as well. But it's really, really important that we have that political leadership. So it's great to be here with you, and really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you very much. I think you touched upon a lot of topics, especially now. I'm thinking of the session on Africa, just the 2 past hours actually, and how the importance of moving the money, from the military-industrial complex, from neo-colonial exploitation cultures and economies, I would say, towards a just development. And yeah, maybe this way it is a nice bridge to pass to Sam Mason from the CND, who will speak about Britain's recent strategic defense review. What is in there actually, except deterrence? Or Sam, looking forward to hear you now. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Katerina. Yeah, and I think very apt to follow that huge amount that Sophie covered as well, and equally really pleased to be part of this event in a very small way today, and quite incredible. So I'm just going to give a little bit of detail which kind of frames some of the stuff that Sophie's been talking about in terms of the recent strategic defence review and what we've produced as an alternative defence review, which is supported by CND. So the UK government published its strategic defence review at the beginning of June, and it posits it as a bold response to global threats, most notably Russia and rising political tensions. This includes in its analysis increased competition between states, rapid and unpredictable technological developments, as well as the security of Europe, with it no longer being a priority for the US to act as a sort of guarantee of security for Europe. Now, it's a defence plan for war or war readiness, in what it says is a generational challenge that demands a generational response. Now, as part of it, I think there's 4 particular elements it's important to highlight before going on to talk about the alternative defence review. And just to say that alternative was proposed by CND Trade Union Advisory Group in response to the UK Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers Union decision to campaign with other trade unions and peace organisations to convene a Labour and Peace Summit to work out the basis of a new foreign policy with promotion of peace and social justice at its heart. Now, firstly, the SDR, as I call it for shorthand, situates an increase in military spending as necessary for national security and economic growth. And obviously the latter of that is referring also to translate into jobs coming out of it. Now, Sophie's already touched on that massive increase in defence spending, as they're calling it. Its overarching message is that if you want peace, you need to prepare for war. It's obviously not something we would accept. Thirdly, central to that peace is the unwavering commitment to NATO and the so-called independent nuclear deterrent. And indeed, the so-called modern industrial strategy, which has just been published following the SDR, of which defence is one of 8 key sectors. It states firmly in there that the UK is a nuclear nation with nuclear as the bedrock of the country's energy and national security. So it's not just about the weapons side, it's also about civilian nuclear and revival, which is happening across the world, and particularly amongst nuclear armed states, around nuclear energy as well. And a very open admission that the two are inextricably linked, whereas before that, governments didn't used to like to say that, but now it's very explicit that they both go together arm in arm. And the 4th element, which I think it's important to add and highlight, is that the SDR advocates for what it calls a whole society approach as a national conversation. Now, what it means as a whole society approach is that everything we do economically and across society is geared towards this whole military agenda. So, for example, within the education system, obviously within our spending priorities, putting defence at the heart of industrial strategy and growth strategy and jobs. But I think, you know, as Sophie very clearly put, where is that conversation? Where is that debate? There's nothing in Parliament, let alone among the general public. And it's not to say that obviously groups within the general public are not discussing it, but there is no there's no forum to actually enter this debate. Now, this is why we felt, following the initiative of the RMT Union, the need to develop an alternative that challenges the dominant war narrative, a narrative that's cultivated by political elites, the military industrial complex and the mainstream media, and offer a new vision for peace, justice and security, and to say that there is an alternative for this than rather being pushed down this path, which is what's currently happening. Now, we published our review just ahead of the government's SDR at the end of May, and we're aiming to use this as a contribution to widen the discussion, understanding and opposition to increased military spending, including nuclear weapons. And in contrast, we look at how militarism has distorted national priorities, fueled global instability, undermined international law, harmed the environment, and diverted investment from public services and social infrastructure. Now, a really important element of this, and it's why I strongly, and we always reference the RMT Union, not just as it's being sort of its initiative, but we've got a very big job to do within our trade union movement to debunk the jobs myth that's attached to increased defence spending and supported by main UK industrial trade unions. And this is an attempt also to build confidence within the labour movement around the arguments against increased defence spending. So in our analysis, we show that it offers limited job creation while stifling a more sustainable and just economy, and therefore jobs that should be focused on addressing what we might call the real generational challenges of climate change and environmental degradation, failing public services in health, social care and education, for example, and a real clean energy transition, of which does not include nuclear power, which is not clean energy. So with increasing UK inequality, which again, Sophie's already highlighted that, you know, particular issue within the UK now, this drive for a military Keynesianism, or what Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called the defence dividend, will do nothing to halt or, more importantly, reverse this increasing inequality and the things that, you know, people need in society. So above all, our review calls for a shift towards a significantly demilitarised defence strategy, which is rooted in human and common security, prioritising diplomacy, global cooperation, conflict prevention, and the creation of well-paid, secure, unionised, and what we refer to as socially useful jobs. So it's a credible democratic alternative to militarism that advocates for a sustainable economy grounded in social justice, global solidarity, and that addresses the real and urgent priorities facing humanity, for which there is an urgent need to build for peace, not war, and of course the increased threat of nuclear war. And, you know, that document is available online from the C&D website. I expect we can share a link to it. That'd be really useful. And if anybody wants to engage and ask questions about that or find out more, that would be most welcome. I mean, this is just the start of, we hope, of a much bigger and growing conversation. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Also, if I feel again worried, I guess this is the emotional roller coaster of the peace wave as well. Somehow you don't feel alone anymore, which peace activists around the world keep feeling the last years, particularly due to the developments. But at the same time, yeah, the prospects are very grim, and it's the need to work together in broad coalitions to stop this is very, very strong, very imminent. So Steve, I saw you're with us. Steve Bell, also from the Stop the War Coalition. He will take us to another part of the struggle that is quite vivid and strong in the UK, but nonetheless, the British government right now doesn't really seem to care. So tell us, can we actually stop genocide? And do something against the nuclear danger? How does it look like over there?
Thank you, Katrina, and thanks to Emily and all who have made Peacewave 2025 possible. Since October 2023, we have witnessed the first genocide of the digital era. Part of the Palestinian population in Gaza has been eradicated. The new Harvard study by Israeli Professor Yaakov Gav, using Israeli Defense Force figures, found that 377,000 Palestinians are unaccounted for, a potential loss of 17% of the population since the start of the war. For Palestinians still alive in Gaza, their society has been broken into a daily struggle for survival amongst rubble, where water, food, and electricity are scarce commodities. Facilities for health, education, and higher learning, commerce, social life, and religious observance have been completely or mostly destroyed. And according to the UN, around 800 Palestinians have been killed since May in and around the ration queues. Of course, the brutal regime of Netanyahu's government is immediately to blame, but it would have been impossible for the Israeli state to pursue such destruction for a single day without the support of the US government and its allies in Europe and Britain. Not only have these governments provided the military material to make genocide possible, they have also provided the diplomatic and political support to prevent the Israeli government being held accountable for war crimes and breaches of international humanitarian law. In the name of Israel's right of defense, they have facilitated and taken part in the massacre of a dispersed, dispossessed, and stateless people. German Chancellor Merz dropped the mask when he stated in supporting Israel's unprovoked attack on Iran, this was, quote, dirty work Israel is doing for all of us, unquote. That all of us is not you and me. It is capital, arms manufacturers, energy majors, and the fabulously wealthy in the old empires. Western imperialism continues to treat West Asia and North Africa as its resource. Today it funds Israel as its proxy and sustains dictators and monarchs who accept US hegemony. The international movement in support of the Palestinians since October has been the main expression of the global majority who support the Palestinians. Most governments in the world have reflected their population views in supporting the Palestinians at the UN and multilateral bodies. Where governments have supported genocide, they have faced popular mobilizations for Palestine. The governments of the US, France, Germany, Britain, etc., who shout loudest about the need for international order, law, and values are those who have opposed all initiatives through multilateral bodies. In Gaza, the Western powers have offered a picture of what will be done to developing countries who pursue a course independent of US interests. Iran was chosen as the first post-Gaza lesson to the global south. The initial attack was undertaken with US support, and the end direct US military action was used to bail out Israel. The ceasefire was declared by Trump, not Netanyahu. This is the world order after Gaza. War without law or morality. The attack on the 13th of June was a breach of the UN Charter, as there was no authorization by the UN Security Council or General Assembly. The Israeli strikes breached the Geneva Convention, as no care had been taken to avoid or minimize civilian casualties. The assassination of military figures and scientists involved the killing of their families, neighbors, and other civilians. The attacks by the US and Israel on nuclear facilities was a breach of the spirit of cooperation in the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It also endangered sections of the population through potential large-scale contamination. Nor should we miss the hypocrisy of two nuclear-armed states attacking a state without such arms in defense of non-proliferation. In fact, Iran's nuclear program has been subjected to more extensive oversight than any other nation, while the Israeli state rejects all international inspection of its program. Political cant also reached a new low in the statement of the E3 governments, Britain, France, and Germany, They demanded that Iran return to a negotiating table it had never left. Once the Israeli government had cashed the advantage of surprise, the Iranian reply shocked them. Within less than a day, the Iranian forces had reorganized their chain of command and launched its counteroffensive. Within a few days, the Israeli defenses were ruptured and threatened with exhaustion. The US stepped in to bomb Fordow and impose a ceasefire for its proxy. Now, in these terrible and dispiriting times, we must not overlook the resistance of the oppressed. The Palestinians are absolutely refusing to go quietly into oblivion. The Iranian people will not have their society remade to a US design. These resistances we can aid by continuing our work against war and nuclear threats in the region. Let us recall the resilience of the Vietnamese people who inspired the international movement which accelerated the end of the US wars in Southeast Asia. Let us recall the unswerving courage of the South African people which created the international anti-apartheid movement, hastening the racist regime's end. We are part of successive waves of solidarity with the oppressed peoples of the world. We must continue our mobilizations, our educational initiatives, and our agitation for a just peace for Palestine. We must prepare for new rounds of assaults upon Iran and demand an end to sanctions against the Iranian people. In the words of Irish freedom fighter and martyr Terence McSweeney, it is not those who can inflict the most, but those that can endure the most who will prevail.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We actually want to connect at this point to a little festival in Kirkstall in Yorkshire, in West Yorkshire. But as we're waiting for the people there to connect, we would jump island and go to Ireland. And I'd like to ask Emily to play the video message by Stephen Kelly, the chair of PANA of the Peace and Neutrality Alliance, about the situation in Ireland and the threats to the triple lock. Let's start with that so that our friends in Yorkshire have some time to connect. Is that okay?
Stephen Kelly from the Peace and Neutrality Alliance of Ireland. We are currently fighting very hard in order to preserve the triple lock. The triple lock is a provision that we have in Ireland, which means that our troops can't go abroad unless there is a United Nations mandate. The Irish government are pressing to abolish this provision in Irish law, which would mean that Irish troops can be sent wherever and whenever the government wants overseas, and there would be no safeguard whatsoever to ensure that they comply with international law. What we have seen in order to facilitate this is a series of attacks and ample misinformation about how the United Nations works. For example, there is the depiction of the United Nations as constantly being deadlocked, when in actual fact, over the past, in the 5-year period from 2020 to 2024, there were no fewer than 284 resolutions brought to the UN Security Council, and of those 284, 264 were passed with no veto. So it is a complete lie to claim that the UN Security Council is deadlocked, yet this is a refrain we constantly hear from the Irish government. The United Nations Special Rapporteur for Food has, in light of the genocide in Gaza, appealed to Ireland and to the Irish government to activate the UN's Uniting for Peace mechanism, which means that a 2/3 majority of member states of the UN can vote where a permanent member is exercising a veto, can themselves vote to establish a peacekeeping force, as happened in 1956 in Egypt. That's what the UN Special Rapporteur for Food called on Ireland to do, and the Irish government have ignored this. So they are complaining about how we are hamstrung by the United Nations in our foreign policy, as they describe it, whilst not heeding this very important call to assist the starving, murdered, and displaced people of Gaza. The Irish government are certainly in the running for the Oscars, if there were to be an Oscars, for acting among politicians, given the pity they purport to show for the people of Palestine, when in reality, Ireland now is little more than an aircraft carrier, as Shannon Airport is a key stop-off point for aeroplanes going from the United States to various theatres of war, including the Middle East, to arm Israel. There are some activists who are putting together a legal case now in order to try and bring this to an end, to challenge the government on failing to adhere to their obligations under the Genocide Convention and other international legal provisions. Hopefully, this will succeed. But these are the main challenges the peace movement in Ireland is currently facing. We are also being sucked ever more deeply into a militarized European Union. And the EU's new rapid deployment capacity, so-called, which has 5,000 troops, has recently been activated. It hasn't been sent on any live missions yet, but we have no doubt that it will do, and that, as usual, it will be in the interests of propping up Western, and in particular, probably French, imperialism and colonialism. These are contrary to the values that the vast majority of Irish people hold dear, which are values of peace and promoting reconciliation through our foreign policy, and as set out in Article 29 of Bunreacht na hÉireann, the Constitution of Ireland. So it's a very challenging time. Thank you so much for giving me the space to update you all. Congratulations on your continued work, and I look forward to hearing from you. Gur míle maith agam.
Virtual thanks to Stephen, but also an apology to the friends from CND Yorkshire that were apparently already in the stream. I'm sorry, I cannot look at all the screens, obviously, at the same time. So the floor is yours, and we're happy to connect to the Kirkstart Festival. Hi. Hi,
Hello.
unmute yourself.
Sorry, sorry about not seeing the message originally, but really glad to be here. So we are currently at a festival in Leeds. There's lots of people here. We've been speaking to lots of public about our campaign for nuclear disarmament. So I'll show you our stall. So we have our T-shirts here. We have a variety of other things on our stall as well, helping to engage people with our work. We have some CND badges. We have this here, which is showcasing how the public would like the government's money to be spent if they had control over our taxes and where money goes. This is especially relevant after the budget was recently published. So as you can see, not many people want money to be spent on nuclear weapons. A lot of people want the money to be spent on health, education, and there's some interest in public infrastructure as well. We also have over here our beer mats. So we've been using these beer mats to spread the word of our campaign to a variety of people. We have this QR code on the back, so if this is left in a pub or a restaurant, somebody can connect with us and learn what we're doing. I believe Colin is going to share some more information about what we're doing and why we're here today.
Well, hello to everybody around the world. This is a very grassroots effort. We're just trying to promote the message of nuclear disarmament through our stall here. It's a very humble affair. It's actually attracted quite a lot of interest. We've had quite a few people, as you see, just signing up to get the newsletter, to receive information about actions that we're having in this region, the whole of Yorkshire. And, you know, we've got the various tools, you know, to do the job. So there's all the usual websites and social media sites and so forth. We've also got these banners, and we've just had a wonderful interaction with people, actors from Star Wars. There's been a show this afternoon about Star Wars, and they stood in their Star Wars outfits. Star Wars. So we'll be a separate image because it's really quite striking. And with their message as well. So, you know, the children's theatres, the Civic Trust, all sorts of other activities. And so this is in a way, it sums up our problem. We have to get our message through this cacophony of noise for all sorts of good causes and bad causes. But we think it's making some impact in a small way. It builds up to a national and of course, an international campaign.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I'll hand the floor over to the rest of the world now. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Greetings. Greetings to all. This was amazing. So while we are meeting 2D, there's still people on the streets carrying our messages of peace. So it was very nice to visit Yorkshire. Thank you for connecting. And now I'd like to jump back to Ireland and give the floor to Niamh Bryan, the coordinator of the War and Pacification Program of the Transnational Institute. Niamh has also been massively campaigning the last months in support of neutrality in Ireland. We know that in the last couple of years in Europe, Sweden and Finland decided to abandon the practice of neutrality. So the more important it is to keep the hope alive in Ireland right now. So Niamh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks very much for having me. Lovely to see you. Thanks, Emily, Sean, and Michelle also from IPB for having us. It's great to be part of the Peace Wave. I think it's my second or third year. And I suppose this year it's maybe setting out a bit what Stephen mentioned. Our neutrality is really, really under threat at the moment. And so a lot of the work I've been doing at TNI up to this point, Transnational Institute, has been very much looking at the European Union and European militarization, and that's been the focus of my work for the last number of years. But anyone who might have written to me in the last few months will have gotten an out of office. And that's not because I have been out of the office, but it's not because I've been off work. I've been back in Ireland involved in a neutrality roadshow. And it's really an urgent effort, I think, and a people-led initiative to push back against, as Kat mentioned, Finland and Sweden have gone ahead and joined NATO, and really to push back against the attack that's, coming from, really coming from the powerful in Brussels, also coming from Washington, coming from the arms lobby, the arms industry, to erode Irish neutrality. And I suppose the two things that are worth mentioning are that neutrality makes warmongers very uncomfortable, because it shows that there is an alternative to war and you can oppose war and make space for peace. So if you have a neutral country like Ireland in Europe, it makes, it shows that there actually is an alternative and that we don't have to be pushing forward with a war agenda. We can actually set out a neutrality agenda which opposes Ireland or, other European powers from joining any war effort. I think it's important to mention also neutrality is not profitable for the arms industry, and there's been such an embedded kind of space that's been given to the arms industry in Brussels and in European capitals, Ireland included. We now have an arms lobby group based in Dublin. I think it's really important to point out how neutrality is not profitable for the arms industry, and they have been given over so much power. That there's really a lot of pressure bearing down from a for-profit agenda to push back against neutrality and to kind of constantly push this idea that we're under threat. Maybe just to set out for Irish people in particular, neutrality is very much a part of our identity. It's part of the idea that it stems from an anti-imperialist stance in Ireland. It's something that dates back over a century. The first iterations of neutrality actually come from the late 1700s from Wolfe Tone, one of the Irish revolutionaries. But in the last 100 plus years, neutrality has really been about an anti-imperialist stance and about saying we will not send Irish people to fight in foreign wars to kill and be killed. So often people think neutrality is about doing nothing. Actually, there's nothing more active about saying we will not participate in imperialist wars. So it's very much an active stance, an anti-imperialist stance. And so that's really our struggle at the moment. And our government, as Stephen pointed out, is very much, you know, they've drunk the Kool-Aid and they are very much keen on dragging us into the upcoming European war that we've been told is on the cards from European leaders. Emily has prepared some videos to kind of explain what the Neutrality Roadshow was. So maybe, Emily, if we put on the first one, which shows the Neutrality Roadshow, I think if you see the videos, then I can explain a bit, and then we'll show a short video of some of the content from one of the organizers, just to give a better idea of it. So I think, Emily, if you put on the roadshow video with the photos. Let's see. Great. So that gives you a bit of a flavour of the roadshow. So basically it was myself and Fionn Wallace, a friend and colleague, who basically set off in that white van that you see there. The van used to be the old milk van in Wexford town. It's now being it's its own van, but we basically had the van. We went around Ireland in it. We got an easel and we made some posters and flyers, and we basically just got in touch with communities all around the country and asked them if they would host a neutrality event. And it was really warmly received across the country. We did 22 events in 30 days, driving up and down across and around the country. We got on local radio, into local newspapers. We met with hundreds of people. We had people coming out to events. In one event, it was very moving because it was a group of teenagers, and they came out to one of the events and they asked us what would happen to them if the triple lock was eroded, and would it mean that they were to be sent off to war. We had in other events parents of peacekeepers who are in the Irish Army and who are up until now involved in UN peacekeeping missions, asking us what will happen to their children if the triple lock is revoked and will they be sent off to war. We had a US veteran join actually and break down in tears in one of the events because, you know, he was able to tell of his experience in Vietnam. So it was really engaging people all over the country and having conversations about Irish neutrality and the need to protect it, because there's been a disinformation campaign coming from the Irish government and coming from the Irish media establishment that has been really, you know, telling people that neutrality is an archaic position to hold. It's something of the past. It won't serve us. We need to, you know, arm up and defend ourselves. We're letting down our European allies. And so it was really about the roadshow was really it came about because of a frustration for so many of us who feel, you know, Irish people support neutrality overwhelmingly, and poll after poll has shown that. The most recent poll was 75% in favour of neutrality, and yet our government is spreading lies basically to put forward this legislative proposal that will see our Irish neutrality really, you know, kind of relegated to something of the past. There's a second video that Emily has it's about the pressure that we're getting from the European Union to abandon Irish neutrality. And I think it's really important context because this is the kind of European leg of the peace wave. So the video that Emily's going to put on now is from one of the roadshow events. It's in County Kildare, and it's one of the organisers speaking about the kind of the role of the European Union and Ireland and the interlinkages there. So thanks, Emily.
Successive Irish governments will go out of their way to assure the Dáil, the Irish public, the Irish media, that, you know, there is no such thing as an EU army, and there's not going to be, and even if there was, the Irish Defence Forces would have nothing to do with it. But over there, they have been talking about the EU army for years and years and years. Jean-Claude Juncker, the Commission President, talking about Lisbon, said that the EU army and PESCO and these kind of military structures that were born out of the Lisbon Treaty, he said this is the sleeping beauty of the Lisbon Treaty. He said this quite a time ago. And when they talk about the EU army, they talk about it as if the Irish Defence Forces are already in it. And we had an example of this back in January when the new High Commissioner for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, was at this was January, and she was at the annual conference of the European Defence Agency, and she stood up and she said, "We do not need one European army, we need 27 European armies that can work together effectively to deter our rivals and defend Europe, preferably with our allies and partners, but alone if necessary." So in this formulation from Callas, Ireland is standing shoulder to shoulder with this European army of armies as they tool up to get together to, you know, deter or whatever the rest of the world, and preferably with NATO, but alone if necessary. So the EU is getting impatient with Ireland. They will not accept our neutrality anymore, and they are losing tolerance and understanding of our position. I mean, where do you start? The EU has no confidence when it comes to our foreign affairs. That is solely a matter for our government and our people. It does not matter what they think about our neutrality, and nor should we be concerned with what they think about our neutrality. And we clearly aren't.
I feel a particular responsibility to the mothers, to the family members of Defence Force personnel, to teenagers, to former peacekeepers who shared their stories with me during the Neutrality Roadshow and expressed genuine fear at what may lie ahead if the triple lock is abolished. So we need to be very clear. This bill is about putting people in harm's way.
Okay, thanks, Emily. So that was just two clips. One was from the roadshow event in Kildare, where we, you know, and people were genuinely very shocked at how embedded Ireland already is in the EU military structures, because it's something that Irish people have opposed in two consecutive referenda. We opposed joining EU military structures in the Nice and in the Lisbon Treaty referendum. So, and then the second clip that was there at the end, which I didn't expect of myself, was actually, that was me in the Irish Parliament last week or the week before. So basically, maybe just to mention, since the roadshow, we've had a few very solid successes. So we've had some county councils in Ireland, Donegal, Cavan, and also the Derry Strabane District Council. We've had those councils come out with motions in support of Irish neutrality and in maintaining the triple lock, and that has been putting pressure on the government from county council level up for them to maintain the triple lock, which has been really important. There's also been lots of people, you know, mobilising on the street, as some of the photos were seen. There's been lots of activity in the media also. And then the last video that you saw there was of the Irish Parliament, where there's now a move to have a legislative scrutiny process of the piece of legislation that's seeking to revoke the triple lock that would allow us then to participate in NATO missions. we were actually invited to participate in that legislative process and basically provide feedback to the legislation. And of course, we shredded it, myself and Stephen, who participated in the video earlier on. And we were really, you know, the politicians behaved as though they were a bunch of kind of cornered rats. And they really treated us very badly, you know, accusing us of having attitude problems and all sorts of things. So you know that, you know, when you have not got a leg to stand on, then you attack the messenger instead of attacking the message. And that's exactly what we saw happen in the Irish Parliament, where they attacked us as peace activists from the Peace and Neutrality Alliance, and in my case on Transnational Institute, and also from the Roadshow actions. They attacked us as people as opposed to the message, because they know that the Irish people support neutrality overwhelmingly. So maybe just to say, because I think our time is probably up, yeah, that it's really an imperative, I think, that we come together. We had a neutrality gathering in Switzerland a few weeks ago. And that we see this as part of a global movement. So I think that's why the peace wave is so important, because you get to dip in and out of different contexts and see that we're all up against the same struggle, and that we can all work together. So thanks a million, Emily. Thanks to Sean and Michelle. Thanks to Kat also, and to everyone for inviting me to participate. Take care.
Thank you, Niamh. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking us with you on tour in Ireland to defend neutrality. I think it's wonderful that, I hope you can hear me. Okay. I think it's wonderful that we can also get ideas from each other on actions. I saw already a lot of people commenting how wonderful the idea of the roadshow is as well. So now we would pass to Yuri Selyachenko, the Executive Secretary of the Ukrainian Pacifist Movement. Before giving the floor to Yuri, I just want to say that we're running a little bit back of time. So those of you upcoming speakers, if you can cut a little bit of your interventions, it would be amazingly helpful. And Yuri, I'm not sure if you want to show a video or you will connect with us live. Hi, Yuri.
Hello,
Okay.
I am sharing video.
Okay, thanks.
If there will be no sound, say me.
Okay. Press play and then we'll let you know.
One moment, I need to disable notifications of air raid alerts, because there are air raid alerts today, and just to remove this noise. Sorry, it is situation in Ukraine.
You don't have to apologize, Yuri. Thank you for being here under the circumstances.
Greetings from Ukrainian pacifist movement at the worldwide peace wave. Today, on 12th July, we celebrate the International Day of Hope. Our home planet and country is turned into hell by militarists, but we are determined to find peace between all living beings and our natural environment, to live sustainably in harmony and happiness. We hope to change the world by hard work and radical pacifist vision, because the world needs profound changes. Today's world spends hundreds times more on war than on peace. Result is the nightmare. Tens of ongoing conflicts, devastating many countries, and humankind sits on the powder keg of obscenely monstrous nuclear stockpiles.
People are killed and cities are destroyed in Ukraine after the Russian invasion. People want peace, but forced to fight for aggressor and for the defenders with arbitrary detentions and torture. with no respect to conscientious objectors. All of this happens because we were not prepared to prevent or stop aggression by non-violent action, and because the archaic war-making power of conscription is still not prohibited by international law. We live in a country of the nightmare that might come everywhere unless humankind will learn how to resist and abolish all wars and militarism. You could be forced to hide in shelter from rocket attacks during sleepless nights like we do. Your morning too could begin with awakening and seeing in the window smoke from fire in a destroyed house nearby. And you will be lucky if it's not your house that was ruined by a Russian ballistic missile. Your city could be occupied, and you might be executed for slightest protest.
Your government, like Ukrainian and Russian governments, could start forcible conscription of population based on the idea that everyone should fight the war. You could be taken by force to a military unit and tortured if you refuse to abandon your pacifist beliefs and submit to a commander. There are hundreds of arbitrarily detained conscientious objectors in Ukraine and tens of recorded cases of torture and cruel treatment. In many cases, the objectors were sentenced to years in prison for alleged draft evasion and disobedience, but in fact, for their pacifist religion or beliefs. Member of our Quaker Church and of Ukrainian pacifist movement, Alexander Ivanov, is currently detained in a military unit, his mobile phone taken from him, to sever social contacts and break his will. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and Council of Europe's Commissioner for Human Rights urged Ukraine to end human rights violations during conscription. There is no official reaction. If our government and army could do these abuses, and we are allies, when Russian government could do these abuses, and people tend to copy bad behavior of others in conflict, sooner or later your government and army might think they could do the same for victory at war at any cost. All of this could happen with you like it happened with us, because the world of violence is in a structural crisis. There were too many expectations for magic benefits of violence and deception that proved to be false. It is visible and obvious, so people could choose whether to be led by cruel manipulations or follow their conscience. Many people in Russia and Ukraine chose not to participate in war, and we urge you to support the Object War campaign aimed at ensuring the right to refuse to kill and provide asylum for objectors persecuted in their countries. For millennia, the best people on earth dreamt about the world without wars. Religious people prayed for the kingdom of heaven. Philosophers discussed perpetual peace. Scientists described hundreds of effective methods of nonviolent resistance to all sorts of oppression by aggressors or tyrants alike. There is no need to wage war, no need in armies, no need in nukes, no need in all the harmful militarist nonsense. However, it is not enough just to say that.
When you call for disarmament, you must propose a more effective response to war-making than weapons, a peaceful response. And you should not deny the obvious threats of war-making. You should not think, falsely apologize for aggressors, not for your own inaction in the face of their harmful behavior. Inaction is not an option when military dictators like Putin, both in the East and West, turn the world into hell, enthusiastically leading mass murder in the interest of war profits and weapons manufacturers who stand behind them. We need to resist all war everywhere, maintaining a resilient, peaceful psychology. The resistance starts with critical thinking.
Don't be deceived by promise of Russian propaganda that multilateral sovereign anarchy of great powers will grow wonderful gardens of civilization states in their spheres of influence on the bones of dissidents, watered by blood of their enemies. It is the old hell, not the new world order, worthy to dream about. And there is no trust in the promise of American global primacy and NATO securing the democratic peace by the nukes aimed at very dictator's palace. It is ridiculous and dangerously naive.
If you read the book Pacifism Today, a dialogue about the alternatives to war in Ukraine, you will find many ideas on how people could resist aggression and occupation non-violently. Our best hope lies in the people's ability to pursue freedom and happiness through non-violent action, resisting all disinformation, manipulation, and cruel coercion.
When the military order is in crisis, people could and should build a peaceful world based on shared humanity at the common planet, liberate Earth from sovereign anarchy shaped by wars and permanent cruel competition of great powers for domination and spheres of influence. Every individual and people in the whole have a right to live in peace, and this right entails a right to civil disobedience, to all war making, that might be a powerful tool of popular nonviolent enforcement of requirements of the international law to resolve all disputes between the states peacefully in such frameworks of worldwide nonviolent governance as the United Nations. In the world where everyone will refuse to kill, there will be no wars. This is the best new world order, worthy to hope and to work for. Let's build together this new non-violent world.
Thank you very much, Yuri, for the video message. Thank you also to all activists participating in it. And thank you for bringing at the table of this year's Peace Wave broadcast from Europe the necessity to help, assist, and be solidary to people that refuse to kill, consensus objectors. So thank you very much. I would like to give the floor now to Oleg Bodrov. Oleg is chairman of the Public Council of South Coast of the Gulf of Finland, and he has been active in the Russian peace and environmental protection movement, as well as the nuclear safety movements. All of the floor is yours. To everybody, a message. We're running a little bit back of time, so I really appreciate it if you keep your times as speakers. Thank you, Oleg, for being here.
Thank you, colleagues. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Yuri, and your colleagues for your peace promotion in Ukraine. And I like very much your activities. And dear friends of the peace, greeting the Way of Peace 2025 from the eastern part of the Baltic Sea. My Russian colleagues and I are happy to be together with the global peace movement today. I am in Russia on the south coast of the Gulf of Finland of the Baltic Sea. It is near St. Petersburg. 70 kilometers from me is the line of military confrontation between Russia and NATO. NATO representatives have declared the Baltic Sea to be an internal sea of NATO. Military strategists of both NATO and Russia are publicly discussing how they will win if the war begin in the Baltic region. The war in the Baltic has actually already begun. There are terrorist attacks on Russian harbors and on the power lines of the Leningrad nuclear power plant near St. Petersburg and Estonia. If fighting breaks out on the Baltic region, more than 30 nuclear reactors and nuclear waste storages facilities in Russia, Sweden, Finland, Lithuania, and Germany could be destroyed. The destruction of the nuclear facilities is more dangerous than the explosion of an atomic bomb. You know that the people live in Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atomic bombing, but it will never be possible to live near the destroyed Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It is much more dangerous than nuclear bomb. More than 30 nuclear facilities in the Baltic can be destroyed by modern weapons. This will be a collapse of the traditional way of life of 90 million people from 9 countries of the Baltic region, including Russia. More than 100 nuclear reactors have been built in Europe. In fact, all of Europe is mined by nuclear power plants. Dear colleagues, politicians want to divide us, to make us enemies within national political borders. Public opponents of war in Russia are foreign agents. Opponents of war in the countries around the Baltic Sea are agents of Kremlin. The famous physicist Albert Einstein once noted that if the crisis arises in the system, then the way out of crisis cannot be found by those stakeholders who created this crisis. Fair and secure development required new stakeholders, new ideas, and new models. Those who make decisions about the possible start of military action in the Baltic region are thousands kilometers away. It is in Washington and Moscow. They will not ask us about the beginning of the war. I appeal to environmentalists, human rights activists, and peace movement participants in Ukraine, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Germany, and all countries in the Baltic region. There are many ideas at how to create new basis for the cooperation. One of the ideas is to create joint photo exhibition, our values of the Baltic home environment. Let's share our favorite places on the sea shore to protect them together. Let's to be together, colleagues. We will win. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Oleg. Thank you for your message of peace. Now I would like to give the floor to Olga Karach. Olga is a dear friend, from Belarus, now exiled in Lithuania, and also the director of our house. Olga, are you here?
Yes, but please also put my video.
Let us solve the problem with your video.
I don't know how
Yes.
to do it. Yes.
Just a second. I think Emily and Michelle are on it, and Sean. Try again, perhaps.
Yeah, just a moment. Yes, and how to put video? I don't know.
If you see on the bottom of the
Yes,
screen, you should see.
you did it. Yes. Yeah. So, Katarina, thank you very much for the floor. Dear friends, dear fellow peace builders, today, as Katarina already mentioned, I am in Lithuania, but I speak to you today not from a place of peace, but from its desperate absence. My name is Olga Karach. I come from Belarus, a country where speaking the truth is dangerous, where war is no longer a distant shadow, and where those who refuse military service and refuse to take up arms are treated as criminals. I am speaking for the Belarusian conscientious objectors who are trapped between dictatorship and exile, who say no to violence but are met with prison, torture, or death threats. I am speaking for the young men who burn their draft notices because they don't want to become tools in the war that has never been theirs. I am speaking for the young man Nikita Svirit, a Belarusian deserter who was denied political asylum in Lithuania, facing deportation back to Belarus, where desertion is punishable by death under the charge of high treason. He has been living in hiding in Lithuania now for over a year without hope, without protection, and without faith in the future. I am speaking today for my fellow citizen from Vitebsk region, Captain Denis Urat, of the General Staff of the Belarusian Armed Forces, who was sentenced to 18 years in prison for high treason. What did he do? On March 14, 2021, during his shift, he took a picture of a classified letter from the Minister of Internal Affairs to the Minister of Defense in Belarus during the mass protest actions. The letter revealed Lukashenko's plan to deploy the army to crush peaceful protesters in violation of all Belarusian laws. But standing for peace, opposing war and violence, that is not treason. That is an act of courage, one that strengthens any nation and any society. And yet, I, a peaceful human rights defender, have been labeled a terrorist in Belarus and sentenced to 12 years of imprisonment in absentia. I have been labeled an extremist 24 times. At the same time, military forces in Lithuania attempted to deport me back to Belarus under the official claim that I might get recruited by Russian intelligence in the future. But if deported, I could have been executed not in some hypothetical future, but in very, very real present. Since the International Peace Bureau and the peace movement of Europe, it didn't happen. But still, I am under the threat. Even the Telegram channels of our human rights organization, our house, were labeled extremist simply for helping Belarusian conscientious objectors and deserters. This is what it costs to say no to militarism in Eastern Europe today. And yet, we must say no, because the threat is growing. Russia has already deployed tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus. NATO responds and plays with further escalation. Meanwhile, countries like Lithuania are withdrawing with the landmine ban treaty, a terrifying sign that the humanitarian rules of war are being erased one by one. Where is the space for peace in all this madness? I believe peace must begin with courage. The courage to protect those who refuse to go to the war. The courage to speak out against nuclear blackmail, even when it comes from our own side. The courage to build bridges instead of walls. And the courage to speak up when human rights are violated, whether in Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, Lithuania, or elsewhere. In our small peace house in Lithuania, we offer refuge to children of Belarusian political prisoners and exiled refugee families from Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine. We run a summer camp for refugee children. We support exiled mothers. We help young men from Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine fleeing conscription find safety. We are not many, but we are not alone. Peace is not naive. Peace is resistance. And today, it must be radical, because neutrality in the face of militarism is complicity. So I ask all of you, include conscientious objectors in your peace work. Oppose to return any nuclear weapons to Europe, whether in Belarus, Russia, or the West. Fight against landmines and their deadly legacy in every country where ruled by a dictatorship or calling itself a democracy. And don't let our region become a battlefield for empires once again. Let us together build a peace line along the front lines, because without the sustainable peace, there can be no human rights, no climate justice, and no future for our planet. The next wave will be real peace wave, not a wave of destruction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olga. Thank you. Thank you for your words. Again, like it happened to me before, I kept thinking about the abolition of the mine treaties is bleak, but it's good to be with you all and having
Yeah,
the
for
hope
me,
that we can change things.
the Baltic country who destroyed the treaty, I cannot even explain my emotions. It's something like unbelievable, outside any understanding.
Yes, thank you, Olga. Now I would like to ask Tiljana Milunovic. Tiljana is a researcher on peace and conflict from the Goethe University in Frankfurt, but she's also organizing the Serbian diaspora in support of the students' protests in Serbia. Hey, Tiljana, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here. We know you have to leave soon, so without further ado, take it on.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you everyone for being here and sharing this very moving stories from all over the Europe and world. I'm very honored to be here with you, and I'm really going to try my best to keep it short, to tell a bit more about the situation in Serbia. As you all probably know, the student protest started in November last year after the train station canopy in the city of Novi Sad collapsed and killed 16 people due to corruption. I believe, without going into the details of the story, what was the pre-story of the protest, I would like to emphasize how the student movement in Serbia contributes to peace, and how it could contribute to peace not only in Serbia and the region, of very complex region of the Balkans, but also from the world. First of all, the amount of empathy of these young people and the amount of solidarity that they have woken up within the majority of the society, and they walked from city to city, from village to village, all across Serbia, from north to east to west to the south, and the citizens of Serbia really welcomed them basically as liberators. They have been beaten up brutally. They are still being beaten up brutally by the police, by the current government officials. So it is a very difficult time for Serbian the citizens and students of Serbia. But to come back to the topic of peace, there have been also student-led anti-NATO protests in March. Because Serbia, on 24th of March 1999, Serbia was bombed by NATO. So this day has been marked this year by also large student-led anti-NATO protest. Also, students lead protest against Israel sending army and military equipment to Israel, because although Serbia is officially neutral, Serbia is exporting weapons to Israel, and there have been pro-Palestine protests led by students in Serbia. All of their protests are non-violent. If any violence occurs, it is in terms of defense. So really the emphasis of no violence, on peace, on also reconciliation of the citizens of Serbia, but also for the entire region of the Balkans is very present. And there is also, we've experienced an emotional catharsis taking place, people crying on protests a lot, people seeing that there has been a new narrative in Serbia taking place, people from our neighboring countries supporting Serbian students. All of us, I come from Belgrade for Serbia, but I live in Berlin, and we organize diaspora support protests, not only in Berlin, but in other cities in Germany, in other cities of the world where people from Serbia live abroad. And this tragedy that happened back in November last year brought us closer together. And exactly, so it's also, student protest in Serbia is also against lithium mining, against neocolonialism, and against any imperialist agenda, be it NATO, be it USA, be it Russia, or be it China. Because of all of these imperial powers have their interests not only in countries like Serbia and in the Balkans, but elsewhere. And for example, there is a very strong anti-lithium mining movement, and it is also close closely connected to the student protests in Serbia, because the majority of the population, not only in Serbia but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is against mining. And we see that because of militarization globally, there is a race for resources like lithium and so on. And now I'm really trying to keep it short because the topic is very complex. Serbia has a very tricky geostrategical position, not only Serbia, but the entire region of the Balkans. And personally, it saddens me to see the Western media reporting, especially the German media reporting about student protests in Serbia. I don't think it's sufficient. I don't think it's enough, because the current authoritarian mafia-like regime of Serbia is collaborating with both Russia, with the West, with China, with everybody, just to stay in power. So basically, it's all of them. One gets an impression that it's all of them against the citizens, and against a peaceful against a peaceful life, against a healthy life, against nature, and against humanity. And this is something that students and citizens of Serbia are currently fighting against. And I hope we all stay united in this fight and keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana, for the hopeful message and also reminding us that struggles need to be and always should be connected. Peace is not an issue for itself, but should be part of every social struggle. And also solidarity's greetings from Greece, where I come from, and the struggle against mining is now starting again. Thank you very much, Diana. So now I would like to pass to Esset Samatova, who is a psychologist and a poet and also a member of the IPB Council. And right after Esset, only a moderation note, we're going to pass directly to a video concerning the military base of Ramstein in Germany after Esset. Esset, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Katerina. And for this peace wave, I prepared a poem which name is War is a Lie. And this poem was inspired by the book of David Swenson, War is a Lie. So I'm glad to share it. So war is a lie. They dress it up in flags and drums. In glory's cap, the light once comes. They swear it's right, they say it's just, but all it leaves is death and dust. They say it's brave, it's noble, bold, but blood in veins is getting cold. Just one decision, one command, and ancient cities turn to sand. The child who cries beneath the sky knows more of life than armies try. No anthem soothes mother's moans, who bury children after bones. They sell us fear and phony pride, while sharing profit far behind. Who cares of broken leaves and bones? They say it's part of Games of Thrones. They speak of threats that don't exist and put in jail those who resist. They say they tried all peaceful ways, while drawing maps and setting blaze. But all we know is far from chance, from scripted news and marching rants. No tales can change, no mask can hide. War is a lie, war is a lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esset. This was very moving. Thank you very much.
Hey, my name is Ann Wright, retired Army Colonel, former U.S. diplomat, resigned over the Iraq War. And here we are at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. This is one of the hearts of the U.S. military in all of Europe. It's the largest air base besides maybe one in somewhere else. But you see out there, you see C-5As, you see C-141s, C-17s, and you also see probably the refuelers that went up to refuel the 7 B-2 bombers that took the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs to Iran and detonated them down deep in the whatever, in the ground. Also back out here you see the $3 billion new Army hospital, Landstuhl Hospital, that's being built, and also the headquarters for drone warfare for Africa and probably every place else in the world. So this is really one of the terrible, terrible places that the United States uses to kill people all over Europe, Africa, Middle East, and God knows where else.
Thank you very much, Emily, for playing the video too. Esset, thank you very much for the poem. I wrote it also in the chat, as did many, so thank you. It was really moving for me, at least. Now I would like to pass to Ulla Klotza from Women for Peace Finland and Global Women for Peace United Against the NATO, the so-called one. Ulla and other friends were present also during the counter summit to the NATO in The Hague, and she's with us today, as well as Vanessa Ryan and also Ulla's daughter, who will join us with a poem. Hi, Ulla.
And thank you. for passing the speech over. But first of all, thanks a million to IPB and to World Beyond War that have made this great peace wave possible. Global Women for Peace United Against NATO GWAN was initiated in March 2023 by women worldwide, active in a broad variety of peace organizations and other NGOs, and united by the conviction that NATO is the most aggressive nuclear-armed military machinery in the world. GWAN has attended NATO Counter Summit events, arranged numerous webinars, and produced 2 photo displays of women all around the world against NATO. After a heartbreaking poem by the Irish poet Aoife Riley and performed by Vanessa Ryan, we invite you to a part of the display 2025. Please enjoy the tour around the world to meet courageous women. David wrote that courageous behavior is contagious, and that I hope that. These women saying no to NATO, yes to peace. See more at our website. I pass my headphones over to Vanessa.
I will read the poem One Day by Aoife Riley. Twisted, knotted, pulsating veins, shrieking, squealing, rusty chains, blood-red rivers, stench of death, tangled corpses, poisoned breath, smoked out lungs, bloodshot eyes, gasps for air, promises, lies. Tries to speak, silence or slaughter, mothers, sons, fathers, daughters. No way out, nowhere to turn. Watch our homes crumble and burn. Dreams of a future, a life of hope. Images of terror, a neck, a rope. A gun, a shot, greed, dismay. A world without horror, maybe one day.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Could you, Emily, put on the photo display? Thank you for having us.
NATO war crimes and involvement. NATO, founded in 1949 by 12 countries, is at present the biggest geopolitical war machine of 32 member states. The scale of expansion contributed to international tension as Russia sees itself increasingly surrounded by US and NATO bases. The alliance calls itself a defensive alliance and claims to be based on the member countries' common values of individual liberty, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. In reality, NATO is far from this. NATO has a blood-soaked history of organizing or supporting coups, brutal colonial wars, and military interventions. Within the meaning of the Nuremberg Tribunal judgment in respect to German Second World War crimes, NATO deserves the label criminal organization. Since the 1990s, NATO forces have repeatedly committed severe war crimes and crimes against humanity. In 1999, without the consent of the UN Security Council, NATO bombarded Yugoslavia, violating Article 2 of the UN Charter. NATO performed serious war crimes, such as indiscriminate bombardment of civilian centers and the use of indiscriminate weapons, including depleted uranium and cluster bombs. The Yugoslavia War of Aggression was the prelude to a series of aggressions against Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and elsewhere during which war crimes and crimes against humanity were committed without any punishment. The International Criminal Court, in the hands of the collective West, never investigated these crimes. The war in Ukraine, which NATO expansion did much to provoke, has led to substantially increased NATO activity in Europe. Since the beginning of the war, NATO allies have provided Ukraine with unprecedented levels of financing and arming support. This unwavering support confirms that weapons, not negotiations, are NATO's unshakable motto. The genocidal Israeli war in Gaza and the West Bank, causing worldwide outrage, has been silently accepted by NATO and its allies. This despite the fact that all states have the duty to impose a full arms embargo on Israel. This duty derives from decisions of the International Court of Justice from January and July 2024 that concluded Israel is plausibly carrying out genocidal actions in Gaza in violation of the Genocide Convention and that Israel is illegally occupying Palestine. The arms embargo duty has also been asserted by the UN Human Rights Council and various UN experts. Stopping the flow of arms, energy, food, and other key exports to Israel is meant to ensure the protection of the Palestine people. But NATO countries' arms trades in both directions continue, and Israel can count on diplomatic and military support from NATO countries and for its wars of terror. All this, alongside an increased presence in the Asia-Pacific region and across other parts of the world, increases the risk of conflicts and war. And finally, NATO is a nuclear-armed alliance. Added to nuclear bombs already stationed in the US and France, around 150 US B-61 nuclear bombs have been stationed in Europe, in Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, and Turkey, for years, and now it seems that US nuclear weapons will be brought back to Britain. NATO maintains a nuclear planning group to discuss the launching of a war that would put all life on Earth at risk. NATO coordinates rehearsals or war games practicing for the use of nuclear weapons in Europe. NATO's nuclear policies conflict with the legal obligations of the signatories to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, forbidding the transfer of nuclear weapons to non-nuclear weapon states. Yet US NATO nuclear weapons in Europe are located in non-nuclear weapon states. Furthermore, the alliance does not reject first use of nuclear weapons. NATO, the biggest war machine in the world, constitutes the greatest danger to our survival as a species. There is no doubt NATO is a criminal organization and must, in the name of survival of humankind, be dissolved.
So thank you very much, Ula. Please also post the link to the great video of Guan in the chat so everybody else can visit it and share it around. Thank you for being with us. I need to pass to the next speaker, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Bye-bye. Ula, see you next
Bye.
time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to check if Roberto Morea is here. Roberto is my dear colleague, but he's also part of the coalition Stop Rearm Italy, and he's going to tell us about their mobilizations on the 21st of June, an impressive demonstration with 100,000 people. How did you do it, Roberto?
Thanks. Well, first of all, we start from a campaign that is called Stop Rearm Europe, because after the launch of the Ursula von der Leyen announced the huge expenses that they want to do in Europe in order to rearm our country. We launched this campaign against the rearmament and the spending in army. This was an European campaign. It is, and I invite you to have a look at our website, stoprearm.eu, and thanks to this campaign in Italy, we had more than 400 organizations that signed for this. We launched also a demonstration in the 21st of June, and as Katja say, we were able to collect all these people because we intercept, I think, a need of a large strata of our population to confront what is happening in our time, the tragedy of the genocide in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, and the other wars around the world, and to stop what the militarization bring with it. That's why what we put on the call that we launched for the demonstration is just 4 words: stop, rearm, war, genocide, and authoritarianism. I think that what we heard about Belarus and other countries, it's a typical reaction of what against the peace movement, and it proves that they are not able to stop thinking the people, and that's why they want to have a sort of also militarization of the mind. And I think what we have to do is create a synergies between all over Europe and all over the world, of course, to stop this thinking that only by force we can have a relation with the others. We don't stop. We didn't stop with the demonstration. We are still working on the ground, and we had more than 40 initiative and die-in in all over the country, in big cities and small cities. And now we are starting with proposing the local and regional council and municipality agendas and resolution to stop rearmament, because stop rearmament means also reducing the cost for the weapons and give money to local administration that they are the first touched by this cutting of the social expenditure. So we are trying to root our campaign and to have also local presentation, local activities. And at the end of this, in October, there will be a big march in the Peace March that we do every year. And this year will be very huge. It will be the Perugia-Assisi March that it's start for the 80s against the missiles in Italy. So it's a long history that we have against the war and against the militarization. And I'm here in Paris because we are also a member of the European Parliament, and we want to have in this some university that we held here in Paris also discussion on war economy and how to fight together and to change the policies of Europe. So this is my duty, and I think that what we can do together is to stop and to react at this crazy policies that they want to impose.
Thank you very much, Roberto, for the presentation, the passion, and all the work that fills us outside Italy and inside Italy with hope. We will continue with Italy. This will be also the last live intervention, the last video, or one before the last videos that we will show. until we pass the scepter to our colleagues and friends in Latin America for the next streaming session. So now we will take you to the Donne in Nero, Women in Black in Piombino, in Toscana. With a very inspiring video on their struggle in solidarity with Palestine. Let's leave it to this. Please play the video, Emily.
The Piombino's Women in Black group was founded about 2 years ago. It draws inspiration from the Palestinian Women of the Sun and the Israeli Women Who Dare for Peace female groups that have always sought to build bridges between these two peoples. We gather in the squares of our town in silence, dressed in black with a white band on our arms as a sign of mourning, to remember the victims of all wars and to call for a ceasefire in Palestine as well as in Ukraine. We are against all forms of arms supply and military spending. We immediately joined the No Rearm Europe campaign and have participated in various related events. We aim to encourage people to reflect on the theme of war, which we consider a tragedy. We have done this by producing articles and documents and by organizing 2 conferences and public reading events. Today, we want to share with you one of these readings, written by a journalist named Rossana Rossanda, which I translated for the purpose. I'm a high school teacher. My name is Alessandra Leborato, and I'm reading this to add my voice to all the others who dare for peace. From Side Notes, Rossana Rossanda, 1996. The bomb on Hiroshima took our breath away. We slowly began to understand the magnitude, the catastrophe. We didn't understand its meaning, and what we gradually understood left us speechless. The war was ending, but the destruction was not. In the following months, that monstrous mushroom continued to implode in bodies, in places. Radioactivity entered our vocabulary. The atomic bomb had been unthinkable, but the unthinkable, once it happens, becomes thinkable forever, possible and reproducible. Peace began with massive destruction. I don't know if it was the sheer number of victims that left us speechless. Perhaps they were 130,000, but we had already counted tens of millions dead in the war. Nor was it grief. Other people's grief is just something we rationalize. I think it was the impossibility of imagining the event, the instant disintegration in a flash of flame, the blinding brightness, then the darkness and silence that followed. Even in these days, we've heard the testimonies of survivors, kept apart from the rest for decades, as if contaminated. We listen, but we do not truly hear. We cannot, and perhaps it is right and vital that we cannot. There are places where we must not go. What struck us most was that our side had used the bomb. The American atomic bomb had to come before Hitler's. It was accelerated. The best minds were recruited. Was it necessary? Was it not? How far can we go in extermination to save ourselves from extermination?
So thank you very much, Emily, also for this video. We're 1 minute away from the end of the, let's say, European part of the Peace Wave stream. I want to thank everybody for the technical support, all the speakers for being here with us. We managed, I think, in these 2 hours to articulate the diversity of peace action. We were lucky enough to have people connecting directly from squares in small cities. We heard about peace road and neutrality roadshows, different methods of engaging in cultural festivals, and I think this is also has been a very important message from this Peace Wave. stay in action and stay active. Just a side note that we have at least 3 more videos that we will not be able to show, and greetings from different countries in Europe at this point, in order to finish on time and pass to our Latin American colleagues and friends. But you know, we have been recording this session, so we hope in the final recording we can edit these messages in, so everybody's videos gets passed along in this global peace community. Thank you very much. Thank you also to the IPB and IPB team for the technical support of these 2 hours. And see you soon. Keep up the good fight.
Wonderful job. We better go to part 9 in South America, because part 10 starts live in exactly 2 hours. Gabriel Aguirre, Latin American organizer from World Beyond War. Let's go to you. And this is going to be in Spanish. And if you understand English, click on captions, click on interpretation, click English. Get the captions in English. Gabriel, to you.
Muy buenos días a todas y a todos. Les hablamos desde esta parte del mundo, desde América Latina. Gracias una vez más por compartir con nosotros esta ola de la paz en una nueva